So you've got an espresso machine, you've made some coffees, and now you're asking the question, how can I make this better? How can I get better espresso? It's not coming out maybe quite the way I want. How can I achieve that perfect espresso that I've had in my mind? Well, let me give you some espresso extraction basics that will really help set the stage for you as you are walking down the path of home espresso. But don't forget to subscribe. Home espresso is a thrilling and rewarding journey, but it can also be really frustrating. You get an espresso machine, it doesn't have a clear-cut set of instructions of how to make an espresso. You're kind of left to your own devices to figure this out and figure out what works and what doesn't, and how to make good coffee, and how does it all happen. So what are the guiding principles that you can use when pulling a double shot of espresso? Well, it's really not as complicated as you think. There's basically three factors that you want to consider when you're pulling espresso. You want to consider what is going in, what is my dry coffee weight, and what is my wet coffee weight coming out, and how much time does it take to come out. Those are really the three variables that you want to consider when you're pulling a double shot of espresso or any shot of espresso. A good rule of thumb to kind of get yourself moving into that sweet spot of home espresso is you want to shoot for a 1-to-2 ratio of dry coffee to wet coffee over 20 to 30 seconds of time. If you can hit that, you're going to be moving in the right direction. And once again, that's a 1-to-2 ratio of dry to wet coffee over 20 to 30 seconds of time. Now, what does that actually look like in a practical sense? Well, let's say we want to make a double, and we weigh out 18 grams of dry coffee and grind it up in a high quality burr grinder. That is our dry coffee weight, so 18 grams. So let's say we want to do a 1-to-2 ratio. That means we should be shooting for 36 grams of coffee coming out over 20 to 30 seconds. Now, if you have just gotten yourself a home coffee machine, most home espresso machines that people are going to be buying, you push a button and it does its thing over a set period of time, and it is what it is. So what you need to do is you need to kind of adjust the factors around that in order to end up with that result. And there's a couple ways that you can do that. Number one, if it's coming out wrong, it's likely going to be in one of two ways. You're either going to be putting out too much coffee too quickly, in which case it's likely going to come out a little bit sour, or it's going to be coming out slowly or over too much time, which is going to result in likely a bitter cup of coffee. Now, if it's coming out too quickly or in too high volume or too fast, what you need to do is adjust your grind a little bit finer. And if it's coming out too slowly or not enough volume and it comes out very bitter, you want to coarsen your grind. And that should move you more to that center of that 1-to-2 ratio over 20 to 30 seconds. Now, if you can get there, you're going to be well on your way to home espresso. But does it stop there? Is there a lot of other questions that we could ask? Absolutely. We want to talk about puck preparation. We want to talk about diagnosing channeling issues. Those are all going to be further down the line in different videos. But if you are in that home espresso journey at home and you're trying to figure this out for the very first time, what you need to know is you need to always be shooting for that 1-to-2 ratio, and you want to be getting there over 20 to 30 seconds. Now, is there going to be exceptions? Absolutely. Might you choose to adjust that a little bit as you start to develop your taste? Absolutely, you may. But if you can hit those numbers, if you can get in that 1-to-2 ratio zone, then over 20 to 30 seconds, you're going to be moving towards a good starting point for solid, consistent home espresso. Now, what are some common mistakes people make? Number one, trying to fit too much coffee in your basket. A lot of home espresso machines have smaller baskets, and if you can't fit 18 grams in, just dial it back. Just pull it back to 15, 14 grams. If you're at 15 grams, you want to be shooting for 30 grams of coffee coming out. If you're at 14 grams of dry coffee, you want to be shooting for 28 grams of wet coffee coming out, and so on. Also, very often it's common to tamp too hard, to put too much pressure on that tamper. Really, you want to be shooting for 30 pounds of pressure at the most. And if you want to see what that feels like, just try tamping on a bathroom scale and it will tell you exactly how much pressure you're putting on it. You want to be grinding fresh with a great grinder. If you got an espresso machine and you are using the same old blade grinder that looks like a blender, it's going to be very difficult for you to achieve that brilliant home espresso that you've heard so much about. You want to get a high quality burr grinder, as nice as you can afford, and that will really go a long way to making sure that you can get better espresso at home. If you're using pre-ground, you're only going to be able to go so far, and the espresso is not going to be very good. You want to buy good quality coffee, and then you want to grind it fresh with a high quality grinder. That really is the starting point. So really, if you're just getting started on this journey of home espresso and you're trying to figure out, hey, where do I start? How does this work? That's what you want to be shooting for to begin with, and then you go from there. And if you're having trouble getting there, just drop me a comment, because espresso is complicated. There's different factors, there's different types of beans, there's different types of tampers. There's lots of different issues that can happen, and it's not universal what happens for every person. So drop me a comment. I love to help people out. And in the meantime, remember, 1 to 2, dry to wet, 20 to 30 seconds. That's what you want to be shooting for, and adjust your grind accordingly. Hope that helps. If you have another question, make sure to drop it in the comments, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers.